Okay, we are at time.
Recording in progress.
So let's just say welcome to everybody that is in attendance, our trustees, our staff, some members of the public, and to acknowledge that this is the last board meeting of UBID. And basically just take a moment to recognize that this is a pretty historic moment. So anyways, call to order for our agenda. The first item on the list will be the approval of the agenda. Any late additions, questions, changes? Okay, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay. Adoption of the minutes of the May 20th regular board meeting attached to our package. Any thoughts from anybody? Any ideas of changes?
I didn't have any. No.
All good?
Yeah.
Okay, so motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so into the meat of things, and I will then turn it over to our interim administrator, Gary Nason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll lead off with my interim administrator's report. Janice had a bit of an issue with her dog, I think, and had to get the dog into the vet, but she will be joining the meeting a little later, and the fire chief usually joins at about 3:30, so he'll be coming on as well. So I'll just get into my interim administrator's report. It's fairly lengthy, and the reason I made it lengthy was as much for the CRD's benefit as for the board's benefit, so that I could kind of wrap up the current status of the conversion items as well as the strategic priorities, bring everyone up to speed on where we sit as of June 17th, which is our last meeting. So I've also thrown in a couple, 3 items, kind of new business, just to raise those at this time. It is our last opportunity. I'm not going to read my report. I'm just going to pick the items that, I'm assuming that you've read it. I'm just going to pick the items that I'm going to require some comments or some a board motion on. So I'll lead off with the mutual aid, the fire agreement between the Comox Base, Department of National Defense, and Union Bay. I understand from the fire chief that this has been kind of a long-standing issue and something that's been worked on for quite a while. And it's finally made its way back from the Department of National Defense in Ottawa and other places. And it's really before you for formal approval and a motion just to ratify and execute. It's a mutual aid agreement, which UBID has with a number of other agencies. This one is with DND. It covers the typical items, how and when to request assistance and how long the assistance lasts, and covers off issues with liability that neither party, either party indemnifies the other and saves them harmless from assisting the other party in the event of an incident. Talks about training. It talks about reimbursement of special equipment. If a special piece of equipment is required, it may be subject to some degree of reimbursement. So it's a pretty typical agreement. It's an open-ended agreement, can be canceled, I believe, on a couple of months' notice. There's a cancellation provision in here. The fire chief is very aware of this issue. He was involved in it. He's very comfortable with it. And, you know, if you have any questions, once he joins the meeting, I can just flip it back to him. But it certainly seems in order. It arrived, the CVRD asked what we should do with it. And I said, well, I think it should go on a board agenda for the board to approve it. So we have a formal motion to that effect. And so that it's in the books, because any agreements, bylaws, records now become the CVRDs. So this will become the CVRDs. But I'm recommending, Mr. Chair, that you provide us with a motion just to approve and authorize the execution of the agreement.
Okay, the question, just back to the other trustees, is are you comfortable as is? Would you prefer to wait to execute that motion once the fire chief is in attendance so we could be asked questions, or should we take care of it now?
I was just gonna ask what the fire chief is in agreement with this agreement or not.
Yes, he is.
He is. He
Absolutely.
supports it. He supports it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, either way. I'm willing to say okay now. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
Do it now?
Yep.
Okay, so motion from the board to authorize the chair to sign the mutual aid agreement with DND for fire services.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll recall that, a couple of months back, I think, maybe a little less, the board passed a motion that we have a bit of a conversation with the Royal Bank of Canada in regards to the, I guess, the length of time that it took to convert the construction loan to a basically a 2-year fixed rate term. Just to see whether there could be any potential financial relief that the bank may be able to consider. I did have a lengthy conversation with the appropriate staff person who dealt with UBID's file on this particular matter last week. And, you know, basically what he said is that the root cause of the delay in the delay of the construction loan conversion was basically the issue of signing authorities, that the signature card wasn't being kept current. The 2 signers that signed in December had not been disclosed to RBC, and basically that, you know, it's kind of the client's responsibility to notify the bank of any changes to the signing authorities. And you know, as with all financial institutions, he says we have to follow strict anti-money laundering guidelines when adding new signing officers. So he says in the end, the construction loan remained as an interest-only loan for a longer than anticipated period due to the signature card not being current with RBC, meaning the district paid a higher interest rate while the loan remained interest only, 2.45% per floating rate versus 1.53% fixed rate. So basically he's saying, well, you know, it is what it is, I guess. It just took that long. There was a lot of back and forth in terms of the signing authorities. There was a lot going on at that point in time. And basically it was a period between about November 23rd and March 3rd. So about 2.5 months it took to get the appropriate signing authorities and all the T's crossed and the I's dotted with RBC. So if you'd like me to pursue this matter further, what I would suggest is that if you could provide us with maybe a little bit more specific motion in regards to the kind of financial relief or consideration that they might, you know, look at. Janice, in her report, you may have noticed this, and she's talking about a bit of a different issue, but she does say she raised the matter of the construction loan and the conversion to MFA at a meeting last week with the CVRD. And she says the board voted, as you know, that the term of the loan be 2 years. The RBC rate for a 2-year term is 1.53%. The MFA rate is currently 2.25%. The 2-year term provided the CVRD time to apply for MFA financing, which can be done twice a year. The Union Bay ratepayers are accruing less interest with this RBC loan than with the MFA financing in the short term at the current time. Talking about a little bit of a different issue, but anyway, you know, RBC, they came back and said, well, I'm not sure what we can do for you, but here's the reasons. And, you know, we have to follow certain protocols and procedures. But Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to have a further conversation, I'd be happy to do that, but maybe with a more specific motion.
I'd like to suggest a motion that we request that we reduce the term from 2 years because we don't need 2 years. And as far as the quoted MFA rates, they are tied to the market as well. So they will be coming down. I'm not questioning the accuracy, but they will be, you know. So I would ask, we screwed up with the signatures, fair enough. But I would ask that we reduce the term, 6 months, a year with RBC.
Question. I might have misunderstood, but I hear you, we're paying 1.53 now for 2 years, and the MFA is 2.25 right now.
Correct.
So why would we want to shorten the term? And I think the rates might go up. If inflation keeps going the way it's going, rates will go up, interest rates. So
True.
curious why we would do shorter term.
So I'm wondering about the information we have from Janice, because it makes little sense that MFA rates are higher unless interest rates had risen by over the last while, which isn't the case.
Yeah.
Interest rates have been reasonably stable over the last while. And when we placed this loan, we were aware that MFA was approximately 0.5 percentage point lower
Yeah.
in amounts. And we chose a 2-year term, largely because you can't have an 18-month term. Banks offer 1 year or 2-year terms. And a 1-year term felt like it might be too tight, given we didn't understand the dynamics of conversion at the time. And therefore we selected a 2-year term to make sure that we would be in a window whereby CVRD would be able to convert to MFA. And so, you know, what's the impact of the delay? And I understand the signature card discussion. The impact of the delay is we now need to pay Royal Bank rates rather than MFA rates for, it could be up to 6 months longer because there is only a twice-a-year window with CVRD, or call it 5 months, whatever it is. The motion that I think that, you know, if I was to ask our RBC for anything, it would be this. It would be that RBC agree to waive any loan termination penalties or mortgage termination penalties should CVRD request a termination within the final 3 months of the mortgage period. And that would, you know, cover off the period of delay we're talking about. It wouldn't shorten the loan. It wouldn't necessarily cause a cost, but it would add some flexibility back in.
So moved. I like it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you to just repeat that so I can get it succinctly and correctly?
Sure. I'll see if I can get it the same. It said that the board requests that the administrator request RBC remove any cancellation penalties from the mortgage of the loan within the final 3 months of its term.
still like it.
Okay. Eve, any thoughts on this?
So does that give some your idea is so to give the CVRD flexibility to take advantage of a lower MFA rate or something before the expiry of the 2 years?
Yes, and we were targeting 2 years, obviously, which we were trying to place it, I think, in about September or October of 2020, was it? I guess it was 2020. We were thinking
Yeah, 2022.
yeah. So we thought that, it was likely that July was our conversion date, so we would miss any 1 year opportunity. So we knew that we had to take a 2-year loan, which pushed us. And what we want to make sure is it doesn't push us back past that 2.5 months doesn't push us back an MFA opening, if you will, right? A period in which we could place an MFA loan. The difference is about, of 0.5% a year. I'll just do some quick math on $3.5 million, right?
It's a lot.
Well, it is on a monthly basis. It's not huge, but it's $1,500 a month, right? So it's still, it's
Adds
money, if we could place that, right?
I think it's a good idea too.
Yeah.
Very good.
So, Mr. Chairman, is to request that they remove any cancellation penalties from the loan within that final 3-month period before
Right.
conversion. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, because that would cover that. We could even say 2.5 months if we
Okay.
wanted to,
Understood.
which would then, if that's the period of delay, I'm not hung up on exactly what I just said, 3 months based on
Okay.
Making it easy.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion on this, or should we just vote on the motion?
Good voting.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you. Every little penny makes the difference.
This is by no means assured.
No, but
we're asking a bank to change, so.
Yeah. Right. Good
we're
job.
doing everything we can.
Mr. Chairman, the next item is, I put this on here, proposed logging in the Langley Lake watershed. I placed this on here because I noticed that there has been an escalating degree of concern expressed by some folks and from Director Arbor and yourself in regards to proposed plans by Mosaic to do some logging within the watershed. And I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that there was a technical virtual briefing that was hosted by Mosaic in March, on March 10th. It's called an annual water purveyors meeting. And the superintendent of public works, Sonia, and myself were in attendance. I did attach the minutes to that meeting for your information. And basically, in that meeting, they did advise that they were proposing sometime this year, and I seem to recall that it was around the July period, late June, July, summer period. They were looking into 2 small cut blocks on the west side of the watershed. One block about 7 hectares, the other one I think was about 10. I apologize for this. I did not consider at the time. I didn't have any significant concerns, and I don't believe the superintendent of public works had anything in the way of significant concerns. There was lots of talk about potential mitigation measures and things that could be done and the things that Mosaic has done. I acknowledge that hindsight being 2020, I should have at least alerted the board that yes, there was a meeting. Hey, this is being proposed. Timing not exactly assured. I did not. I underestimated that this could be a sensitive issue. Wasn't sure of the past practice in regards to, briefing the board on a technical briefing. But there was a meeting that was held. I did at the meeting, though, strongly encourage.
You're frozen.
You're frozen, Gary.
He probably can't hear us right now either. Looks like he's dropped, actually.
If I could say something, that was in my March report. I don't know why Gary's taking the fall for it when it was in my report, but
Thank you for that, Dan.
in March.
So maybe it should be us saying mea culpa for missing it.
I don't think Gary should get blamed for it.
Nobody's blaming.
I don't think
We're-
anybody's blaming anybody.
Recording stopped.
Oh, Mary Reynolds is the host now. I think that's because Gary dropped and Mary was probably the second one in.
So the recording has stopped as well. So we really need to suspend the meeting until
Yeah.
Gary comes back. I know, but just from Gary's end, it's gone.
Sometimes
Oh,
it
I'm
comes
sure he
back.
will.
Yeah, sometimes it comes back pretty quick.
Yeah,
It's happened to me before.
let's suspend the meeting for the moment, just to see if Gary can, I think he's calling me right now. So I will go on mute and take this call. Mute here. Okay, Gary's had a power failure.
Oh, dear.
So he is on speakerphone beside my laptop. Gary, could you speak to see if people can hear you?
No.
Not good enough. Let me try this. Try again, Gary.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Just a little.
Barely.
Well, I can speak loud.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Mary, can you hear? Because you're recording? Okay. Okay, let's continue the meeting from here then, and we will ask Mary once again to provide us her recording. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much, Mary. Yep, complete power failure here at my block. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so hopefully people can hear me. The proposed logging in the Langley Lake watershed, I have attached the minutes. If Dan is here, if you have any questions in regards to it, we don't have a lot of detail. But I wanted to inform the board, and clearly this was my oversight and my underestimation in regards to how potentially significant this issue would be in the watershed. Mr. Chairman.
Dan is also not allowing you to fall on your sword. He is telling us that he had it in his March report, and therefore perhaps we as a board needed to pay more attention to it. Dan didn't say that. That's my editorial.
Well, Mr. Chairman, yes, he did mention it, but it was my accountability to bring it to your attention, and I didn't.
So I do have a question for Danny. Danny, the 7 to 10 hectares, is it part of that very steep slope, which I believe was block 4?
No, it's not. It's on the other side of that steep slope.
You know
So-
where I'm talking, where we,
Yes, no, it's so if you're could imagine that steep slope and then kind of go over that hill, that's where it will be. So there, the water that runs off the proposed area, it will go to the north. It will intersect. It barely gets into the watershed or into the lake. If it does, it'll be at the very north end of the lake, right by the spillway.
Right by the
What-
spillway.
The cutting of the
Yeah.
trees, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And then the
Is-
other small block is on the east side of the lake, which is absolutely no concern at all. There's no roads or anything in that area. Very flat. And like they say, they're if I find my report, I think one was 7, there are 2 small blocks, 7 hectares, I think.
So the 7 hectares is no concern. The 10 hectares,
Neither one
abuts-
of them was a concern.
but the 10 hectares has abuts with the spillway. Did I understand that
No,
correctly?
no, that's incorrect. The water that could come off that log area, the only way it could possibly make it to the lake is by entering the big ravine that's at the very north end of the lake that
Yeah.
basically runs into the lake and come right over the spillway. The furthest possible spot from where our intake is.
So you have no concerns about that?
I didn't have any concerns at the time, no. And
So just in terms of history, just before I'll let Eve ask some, but I just want Ian, mostly Ian and Eve, to know that this was the logging of the watershed was one topic, Danny, you might recall, that we were in fact united on with the previous board. And we wrote a letter requesting that the logging not happen. I am still feeling very uncomfortable with logging proceeding while Union Bay does not have a watershed protection plan. And I'm very glad that that was brought up. I think Sonia brought it up at that Mosaic meeting, that we have the beginnings, we got started, but we do not have a watershed protection plan. And I feel very strongly, and I'll make a motion to that effect, that I ask that logging be postponed until the completion of a proper watershed protection plan. I think that's a reasonable thing. And I would like to make that motion.
Is that at this time, or are you waiting for other commentary?
Well, that's how I feel right now.
Okay, so I will come back to it then, okay? And just,
Okay.
I'll ask Eve. I've got some other information on that as well.
Okay.
Eve, any thoughts from you on this before I?
So I'm curious, that meeting, the board used to attend that meeting. I don't know why no board members were at that meeting in the first place. We always met with them once a year, I thought, but anyway.
Yes, we did. I recall my early couple of years as a trustee, we did attend.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't. this time.
The company changed hands too.
Hmm.
Is that not correct, Danny? Mosaic?
Yeah, Mosaic did the amalgamated Highland Timberlands and Timber, the one from the south from Victoria.
Anyway.
It was an amalgamation, yes. Yeah.
It was an oversight on our part as board members.
Yeah, the way it usually typically worked was we would go down to their office in Northwest Bay. And that's the way we've been doing it for years, or they would sometimes come up here. Obviously, COVID happened and things were done on Zoom. So
Mhm.
I know the invite went to the CAO and to myself and
Yeah, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
water under the bridge.
Eve, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So you don't, Danny, you don't think that these cut blocks will affect our water quality going into the plant at all?
I'm not a forester, Eve, but with my experience here, I don't believe so. It's nothing like Susanna mentioned, the one that was on that real steep slope. I know how the water kind of works in that area, so I don't see it being a problem. They're going to be all the logging trucks won't be in the watershed. They won't be driving through the watershed, so there won't be any disturbance on the roads. They're hauling everything directly out of the watershed at that top end. So, and I think it's been 8 years since they've logged. I know the practices have changed a little bit on what Suzanne said. You know, I gave them a real hard time back then, and I was on them, and I know things are better.
Well, there's still gonna be
I can't say,
right?
yeah, I can't say anything about the logging company or what it's going to turn into or whatnot, but I'm pretty comfortable with it.
But they are clear cutting, correct? 2 blocks, clear cutting. So runoff,
I can't
drain,
say what it's called. Clear cut. They're logging.
they're cutting down all the
They're
trees.
cutting down trees. Yeah.
So it means that there'll be runoff, lots more runoff.
I would imagine, yeah. There will
And
be
they
some,
themselves waited, how graciously they waited until we
Yeah.
paid for a multi-million-dollar plant so they could.
I-
hook up our water.
I'm a firm believer of
Great.
not logging in the watershed. That's my personal point of view.
Good, okay. Anyway,
I still feel we need a watershed protection plan. We've needed that. That was on when I ran in 2016, that was on my list of things that needed to happen. And that's for our fiscal protection. That's for our, that's so that we can cover our butt if something does happen, which
well,
we
I'm
do have.
perceiving that will delay them. If that's what that will do.
Okay, that's an angle I wasn't going to vocalize, but
Delay.
that's another
delay.
one. So I completely concur. I'm just trying to support Daniel Arbor's motion, which I believe passed. Did anybody find out? Did it pass? Wasn't it yesterday, the meeting? You know, we definitely, Union Bay needs to have a proper watershed protection plan.
Whatever
really
that means, yeah.
Part,
What does that
well,
mean?
it's actually very clear, Eve, that there's a very clear process to it. And Mosaic has done their portion of it. Of course, their report says logging is not a concern at all. We need to do our part of it. We need to do our part. And CVRD has done one. There's Gary. Oh my God, we missed you. And Janice too.
Hi, Jen.
So, Susanna, you've brought up that
Yeah.
there is a proposed motion. He had written a letter as of June.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
And so, Gary, I don't know if you have any information from Director Arbor or from CVRD as to whether, I'll read the motion that was proposed within the CVRD realm. It said that Comox Valley Regional District Board write to Mosaic Forest Management requesting that the company suspends its harvesting activities plans in the Langley Lake watershed until 2023. And that further that between now and then the Comox Valley Regional District invite Mosaic Forest Management to work together to explore a watershed conservation plan for the Langley Lake watershed. And then there's a second motion that Comox Valley Regional District Board plan for and invite relevant Vancouver Island jurisdictions and the province to a sharing session and discussion on how best to manage public drinking watersheds on Vancouver Island.
Well, I support both of those motions very strongly.
Mhm.
And I realize that this is a broader legislative issue. It's a provincial issue. It's a big issue. It's affecting every community, and it will become more important as they bring on multi-million-dollar water treatment plants.
So I'd asked a question of
Sorry.
Gary as well, and I didn't let him answer. which was, are you aware of any progress on this?
No, I checked my emails about an hour before the meeting and I hadn't received an update from James in regards to this, I believe was being considered at yesterday's board meeting.
Okay. And so perhaps the motion that we want to make is just to express support for the CVRD motions,
Yeah.
Yes,
because it does turn
Yes.
over to them anyways, and it would be nice for that to be expressed from our board to theirs.
yes.
So motion
So moved.
for the board to express support for the motions proposed by Director Arbor for consideration at the June 16th CVRD board meeting regarding the Langley Lake watershed.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
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 You
Thank
good with
you,
that,
Mr.
Gary?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got that. Now some updates on the UBID CVRD conversion process. I'm not going to read all of them, just the ones that I think are most pertinent and maybe contain a little bit of updated information from my last report 2 weeks ago. On the communications front, there, as you know, there's going to be a small informal ceremony that's being planned for 1 p.m. on June 30th to be held at the Union Bay sign close to the office, with the event to simply recognize the kind of an end of a chapter and celebrate the contributions and commitment of UBID trustees, staff, and volunteers. I've sent out the information to Union-based staff. I've asked the chief to send it out to the volunteers just to let them know. It's going to be very informal, quite quick, I think. Some remarks from Director Arbor and from the chair. I plan to come up to attend that. I've extended the invitation to the staff. Anyone who's available, welcome to come by. A couple of other things on the communications front as well. We're continuing to transition the UBID website to the specific service pages on the CVRD website. Basically, we're working with CVRD communications staff to prepare new website content with the objective of having all of the pages published before on or before the June 25th closure of the UBID office. Also, you may have already received it. CVRD is sending out a Union Bay conversion newsletter to mailing it to all UBID residents this week. It was supposed to go out this week. Okay. So I don't need a motion, but that's basically the communications update. On legislative services, just want to raise the issue that I talked about 2 weeks ago at the COW meeting about transference of if the trustees, current trustees have any corporate records, on their devices, or they have corporate electronic or paper records. Basically, the CRD is asking that staff, myself, for example, Janice, all of us, and the trustees, the current trustees, to provide all corporate records in paper form and from any electronic devices as of June 30th. They're asking that that be transferred to the CVRD. We're not aware, I talked to the manager of legislative services after the COW, we're not aware of any obligation or legal requirement on the part of former or current trustees to hand over corporate documents, but certainly the CVRD is requesting that. So with regard to all corporate and transient records belonging to UBID that trustees have, or maybe on your personal devices, they're asking that it be transferred over to the CVRD or permanently deleted. And again, there's no legal requirement to do that we're aware of, but certainly the CVRD would appreciate getting as much information as possible so that there's an FOI request down the road they can be in a position to fully respond. Me, for example, I'm going to come up on the 30th and I'll bring a box with my paper records, and I'm going to load all my electronic records on a stick, and then delete them from my personal devices. And I know Janice is doing the same thing as well. But again, for trustees, we're not talking about constituency records, records that you may have been used for political campaigns or election campaigns. Not that. It's the corporate stuff, right? Any emails, books, documents, maps, drawings, photographs, letters, vouchers, papers, or legal opinions, electronic, mechanical, or paper or otherwise. So I don't need a motion. It's just a request from the CVRD.
I'm presuming that any documents that flowed to each of us via our email. So for example, we can use one that's on today's agenda, the mutual aid agreement. But any document that flowed outward from staff to trustees is already covered.
Yes.
So this would be only documents that were created and discussed solely amongst trustees and not staff that we would be talking about, right?
Primarily, I mean, if you were involved in a select committee and there wasn't staff there, or you were involved in a sensitive legal issue and you were dealing with the solicitor or something like that, right? Yeah, that's, I mean, most of this stuff we would have. All of this agenda material that we're talking about, I have it, and Janice would have it, because I sent out the agenda. I'm talking about stuff that maybe staff weren't involved in the past.
Right. So from this iteration of the board, most of those types of things, and I'll use as an example, union negotiations, where there was some in-camera activities and some work with our union negotiator where there was communications back and forth. I would have been directing most of that, and I have email records of that within my Union Bay email account, and I have deleted none of it. So that, my assumption is that my time is done, my email is turned off, but the records remain within that email server. That they're on Office 365, and that we do not need to do anything with that. So I would say that to our trustees, that says, make that type of assumption. And if there was any document that you feel that you solely have that relates to UBID business, then I'd encourage everybody to turn it over. I have done that. I have created an email, or a little thumb drive with all of the things that I was working on as chair that perhaps only I had. And that has been delivered to the office in an envelope marked confidential and sealed for delivery to Andrea Sutherland.
Correct. And, I have access to the server, and the kind of material as you talk about related to the collective bargaining process, when I go into the folder, I can see a lot of that in-camera stuff and the discussions that were going on, and that already has been transferred and will be transferred over to the CVRD. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move on. Human resources, just for your information, all of the current UBID water staff and the admin assistant and the fire chief have converted or will become CVRD staff effective July 1st of this year. And I think there was a little meet and greet orientation session, which was held Monday or Tuesday in that regard. On the finance front, just a couple of interesting points. Janice is working diligently and very hard to transition the CVRD's financial system. Transition to the CVRD's financial system is continuing for all key functions such as financial planning, revenue collection, expenditures, reserves, payroll, budget, utilities. And also arrangements are in place now. There's going to be a UBID year-end audit and closeout as of June 30th, 2021. That'll be overseen by the CVRD, but it's a legal requirement that there be an audit done for that January to June period. On the billing front, the CVRD will, and I think you know this, will also be undertaking the May to June bi-monthly billing, with bills set to be distributed mid-July. And the billing cycle for UBID water will be moving to a quarterly process for subsequent billings, with the first quarterly billing to include the July to September period, with billings distributed mid-October. And the billing rate for 2021 will not be changed from the UBID rates, not for 2021. On the parcel taxes,
Gary, maybe I'll just stop you there for a second, just to comment that there has been some correspondence going on between a landowner and CVRD on the a proposed bylaw revision. So Director Arbour has been out in front of this one and saying, hey, we're going to need to modify the tolls and water charges bylaw to reflect quarterly billing. And there was some confusion around it was not stated quarterly, it was stated monthly. In other words, you know, instead of $108 bi-monthly, it didn't become $156 quarterly, it became $54 monthly. And that the water allowance included in that base monthly amount was 10 cubic meters instead of 30 for the quarter. And so there was some confusion around that. And there's been some clarification issued that the process will happen as it does now, which is that it will be billed as $156 a quarter, and the allowance for water will be aggregated into 30 cubic meters a quarter. And that's more favorable to landowners than 10 cubic meters a month. Because, you know, if you had a scenario that said, I used 12 cubic meters in month 1 and 8 cubic meters in month 2, if it's aggregated, I pay nothing extra. If it's not aggregated, I pay for 2 extra cubic meters. So that's all been clarified, and I just wanted to say it here for landowners that might be listening and interested in what's the outcome on this.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, on the parcel tax front, of course, the CVRD is going to be inheriting that system, and basically balances outstanding, any balances outstanding for parcel taxes will be transferred to the CVRD on July 1st of 2021. And a reminder, they're going to be sending out a reminder, will be included in the July and subsequent water bills for 2021. And any balances outstanding at the end of the year, December 31st of this year, will be transferred to the province for collection with the ratepayers' taxes for the 2022 fiscal year. So that's the big change from the UBID system. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my conversion points update. I didn't cover all areas because there hasn't been any change in some of the ones that were in my last report. On the strategic priorities, I'll go through the 5 of them. On the subdivision bylaw, the MMCD standards issue, there was a recommendation, a staff report that went to the Electoral Services Area Committee on Monday, containing recommendations on both the MMCD standards issue and the B parcel issues. And those recommendations were considered on Monday. My understanding from James were that they were adopted by the Electoral Services Area Committee, so they would have been up for ratification yesterday at the board. On the MMCD standards issue, basically the recommendation was as follows: that the CVRD recommends that UBID bylaw number 226 be amended to refer to the master municipal construction documents as a standard for new infrastructure and development by inserting a new section to this effect. The new section 10 would read, system standards, the MMCD construction documents, are to be used as a standard for consideration of new service connections, applications for service, and infrastructure improvements. The CVRD may require any study work or infrastructure improvements to meet MMCD standards. That recommendation would have been considered yesterday by the board. I don't have late breaking information from today as to whether it was adopted yesterday, but clearly their intent is to amend the UBID bylaw. And of course, the UBID bylaw becomes their bylaw. What was silent in the recommendation is the timing of doing that. But my understanding is that they've agreed to certainly get onto that post-conversion. On the B parcels issue, I think this is good news. They've certainly been well briefed. They've had access to our legal advice. Janice has been there at the finance meetings. With the B parcels issue, there's a recommendation in the staff report that went to Electoral Services Committee on Monday, was adopted, was before the board yesterday, and the recommendations says the CVRD will analyze the Union Bay parcels and confirm those that are receiving water or are eligible to receive water for 2022. That process will be undertaken over the summer and fall and integrated in the CVRD's parcel tax roll review panel process in early 2022. So the recommendation is
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
the Comox
Oh, he's
parcel. Sorry?
we thought you had another power failure. You blanked out on us.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh.
No, you're still.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey there, Mr. Chairman, I got that call about 10 minutes ago for the meeting of the site meeting for those contractors.
Yes.
So I gotta go. I have about 10 minutes. I don't know if I can answer any questions for my report, but
Why don't we, Gary, can we suspend your
Abs-
report and come back to it
absolutely.
and let Dan do his now?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, it's a kind of a short report. Just wanted to basically let you know that we're really busy. We got all these installations that are going. We're trying to get them done before the end of this month. I would love to kind of to leave with an empty things to do, but we're meeting down on 4th Street. We have 2 new services to put in there. We have one on 5th Street and one up on McLeod Road that is currently waiting for a permit from Ministry of Highways because we have to do a road crossing. Also in the report is our most recent drinking water scan. You'll find everything, from color to dissolved chloride, and I think you guys will be really happy to look through that. I know it's a lot of information, but that's how well the water treatment plant's working. It's absolutely amazing. We haven't had any problems with it since we had our problems way back in December and January. Since those problems have been fixed, there has been absolutely no call outs to the water treatment plant. And things are rolling very nicely. One thing I would like to mention is we did have another main break on that line down at Emerton Road on Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. So this line's been giving us grief. I know we've talked about it a lot over the last few months and actually over the last couple of years, but what's happening is the pipe is deteriorating. We're fixing it, and the last time we did it, we actually replaced about 30 feet of line. But what's happening is it keeps on blowing and it's getting closer and closer to the highway. When problems started with this line about 4 years ago, we were about 65 feet from the highway. We're about 20 feet from the highway now. Eventually it's gonna blow up under the highway. There's no question in my mind. It's already blown up 5 times in the last 2 years. I did put together a quote that I submitted for to to put in a new line. It's $100,000 plus dollars. But I just want to let you guys know again that there has not been any pipe replacement done in the UBID in 43 years.
Yeah.
Not 1 foot. So it's time. What I'm really worried about on this section is it's the middle of the night and it blows up under the highway and it takes out a lane, and a car will drive into that and someone will get very, very hurt. So I don't know what we can do about speeding up process, but I really want to put it on record that this line has been a problem for us. It needs attention, and I hope we can figure something out.
Okay. I'd like to continue on. I know I'm trying to respect your time because you got to go, but it'd be certainly something for us to discuss with Gary as to what are our options with respect to that particular stretch of line, given the shortness of time. I had a quick question for you on the installations. Do you know of those 5, how many of them had previously paid KEX, or how many of them are paying KEX as a result?
So the 2 on 4th Street that I'm going to look at right now have paid up. Actually, all 5 have put in, or all 4 have put in their applications and have paid. Number 5, which is on 5th Street, has not yet put in an application.
So did they just recently pay too? So they were paid at time of application?
Yes. So 571 McLeod, number 1, they paid probably about 2 months ago. The ones on 4th Street were a little sooner. They were only about a month ago. 3rd Street, that one's a bit of a nightmare. Gary's well versed in that. If you need to ask him any questions, Gary and I have been talking about that one quite a bit lately. So the first 4 have been in, they've done their application, they've paid their $500 application fee. I don't know if they've paid the CECs yet. I'm having a bit of a problem with number 3 because that lot does not have water on its frontage. So I'm not sure if they have or not, but we're going through a bit of a mess with the engineering and whatnot for that one. So the other ones are paid up.
Just wanting to know if we're replenishing that capital fund this year.
Yep. So we got some money to be made here.
Yes. Okay. Dan, I know you're done. Thank you so much for your report. Should we have a motion to adopt to approve Danny's, I guess it's adopt your report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Sorry about the interruption.
No worries. Thank you. And
Thank you, Dan.
and, thanks for taking care of things.
We'll see you later.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, where B parcels. So basically the recommendation, which I'm assuming was adopted by the board yesterday, is that the Comox Valley Regional District's 2022 parcel tax roll review panel process include a commitment to analyze the B parcels issue for the Union Bay Water Service. Third item, the modular, the water treatment plant, separate office, washroom, change room. As you know, we were unsuccessful in getting any quotations by the closing date in late May. The CVRD obviously now with conversion have taken conduct of this file. I've had a chat with some of the water folks at CVRD. And what they're advising me is that, after their plan is that after an initial transition period, all water operators will likely be reporting daily to the new CVRD Water Operations Center and then working as part of the overall team. So in other words, they'd report to the CVRD Water Operations Center and then disperse from there. So they wouldn't necessarily be located in Union Bay all the time. So that, and this is because so that the operators can eventually become familiar with all aspects of the CVRD water system and be cross-trained. So as such, as there may not be any operators based full-time out of Union Bay, what they're looking at now is they're thinking that maybe the scale of the support facility necessary for the water treatment plant could potentially be reduced a bit, maybe to just a washroom and an appropriately sized septic field with no change or lunchroom. But having said that, they are reaching out, or they're going to, and maybe they already have. And if Dan was still here, he could tell me. They're going to reach out to Dan and Sonia to solicit their perspective on this possible direction. So that's what they're looking at now. They're also looking at whether they should be sole sourcing and going directly to builders with recent experience to inquire about availability. So they're on it. They realize that the issue needs to be addressed. And the septic installation, I believe, Janice, has already been done, right? Yes, it was just completed.
I just signed
Ready,
the check, I think.
Yeah.
The site is ready.
Yeah, the site's ready.
Perfect.
So they're on it for sure. And then finally, the procurement of the new fire apparatus. The chief is, I think he usually joins around 3:30. And I'm going to ask him to comment on this because he knows he's the devil in the detail. But basically, as you know, there was a select committee that was established, and they've been working on mandatory and desired specifications for the new apparatus. I think they've essentially completed their work. I asked the chief for my final report to kind of wrap it up, put a condensed form of material together, which basically summarizes the recommended mandatory and desired specs for the new apparatus. That's attached to my report. And basically, the chief will comment on that if you have any questions. So I think the objective here is to basically receive those, and I will pass them on. There maybe should be a motion actually to receive them and pass these. I think the chief's coming on now. Pass these specifications onto the CVRD formally so that they can basically take the ball from here. And I just mentioned in my report an interesting thing that you'll see in the conversion newsletter that is being mailed this week. The CVRD has stated under the fire section in this newsletter that you're going to see, once conversion is complete, the CVRD Fire Services Department will work with the Union Bay Fire Chief and membership to ensure a new fire truck is purchased before the 2025 insurance deadline. So they're making a commitment to do that. So I just noticed that Chief Ham is available. Chief, I really didn't get into the details of the specs. Any comments you want to make? And thanks for including that material and sending it up to me, and I can pass it now on to the CVRD.
I don't really have anything to add to your report, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to working with the CVRD on this though, because their procurement department and the knowledge there is going to be awesome to move this forward. So I look forward to that.
Thanks, Chief. So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest maybe this is one where a motion would be appropriate to receive that material and a request that would be formally passed along to the CVRD fire people.
Okay, motion to receive the select committee's report on mandatory and desirable features for the new replacement fire engine, and to direct the chair to forward them, or the administration and fire chief to forward them to CVRD.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. Unless you have any quick questions for the fire chief in regards to the mutual aid agreement for DND. And Ian, the board has passed a motion to approve and execute that agreement, but I just said, look, if you have any questions, the chief will be coming on board at 3:30. So, Mr. Chair, if the trustees have any questions, the chief could hopefully answer them in regards to the agreement.
Trustees?
Okay, thanks,
Ian,
Mr. Chairman.
I was-
That
I was-
concludes
I was
my
just going to ask
report.
him, just make sure that no reservations, no concerns.
Oh, no, it's just basically the same agreement that we have with all the fire departments in the Comox Valley. It's just the process is a little bit different because the base is a federal entity. So that's why it's a little bit different from them, but.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and I'll turn it over to Janice.
How about we have a first, just kind of doing it differently, but adapting each report as we go. So motion to adopt the interim administrator's report.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Hello, Janice. You're on mute.
Hello.
Hello.
My report's very short. You know, just talking about, you know, we've been meeting and working closely with the regional district. We've had some pretty long meetings, and it's coming together. You know, it's a big conversion, but it's going well. But I did find out something like point 2 about the water treatment plant RBC loan rate. So they were saying, as I said in my report, that it's at 1.5% because it's a short-term loan. So the MFA rate right now is 2.25. So you guys are actually saving money on interest. So
My understanding from the time when we were looking at this last year was that, so we don't have a 2-year loan, we have a 25-year loan, right? With a
no,
2-year
it's
contract.
amortized over 20 years,
Yeah.
but the term of the loan is
Yeah.
2 years.
My understanding is and it makes sense from the perspective of, you know, MFA is cheaper financing, is that when we considered this last year, the MFA rates were 0.5% lower than the Royal Bank rates. So if this is now the case, then MFA rates have risen by 1.5% or so, or 1.25%. And I don't think prevailing rates have moved at all. So I'm just wondering what you know about that.
And that's interesting because Graham was talking about that yesterday, and he said historically MFA rates have been considerably less than standard rates, but due to timing and over the years, he's noticed it's closer.
Yeah, and just my understanding was that it was still lower. MFA was still lower, and that does make sense. That's why MFA exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, this gives the CVRD some breathing room in terms of trying to, you know, get in line to apply for the MFA funding. You can only do it twice a year.
Yeah.
So they seem quite pleased with this rate being so much.
Ian, Janice was not there when we passed the motion regarding the,
The motion today, Susanna?
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just, maybe bring her up to speed that we,
Sure. Janice, we passed a motion basically saying we want to go back to Royal Bank and say, because of the delay in signing, if for any reason the CVRD would like to move to MFA within the last 3 months of this loan term, that they would waive any cancellation penalties.
Right.
So we've made the motion to ask RBC that question.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, you know, just, we are clearing out the office next week. 25th, it will be empty. So I'm going down on Monday. Lindsay and I have been clearing it out. Luckily, fire department needs a fair bit of the furniture and equipment, which is great because the RD did not want to bring anything. You know, they already have everything they need. So Ian's doing us a favor by taking a bunch of stuff.
Awesome. And from your financial report, your actual versus budget, is there anything you'd like to highlight that's unusual for you, or unusual expenditure, drops in revenues, anything like that?
No, and what I have done is I did make an adjustment in May to back out the accrued wages. So you would notice on a future report, which you're not going to get from me, that the wages are more in line because the accrual is pulled out.
Okay.
So,
And that would then be offset by the missing fire compensation that we missed in the budget. Right, that didn't we have
that's the actuals that I've
Yeah.
pulled out.
Yes, you pulled actuals out, but are we not now also expecting to have a higher degree of fire compensation than we budgeted?
Yeah, it was only about $11,000, but Ian, Kevin Duville, James Bass and I have spent quite a bit of time going over a 5-year budget. And, luckily Kevin's really familiar with the workings, and it's been fantastic. So, and he's all about budgeting. So, they're making little tweaks here and there where they can. And I think we're going over it next week sometime. So, he says it shouldn't be a problem. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Adios. Okay. Anything else?
no.
Questions from trustees?
No, I just want to thank you, Janice, for all the work that you've done. I know it's been a crunch. I am so grateful too that we have Kevin at CVRD because he is so familiar, having been the administrator of
Yeah.
Union Bay. So I feel such a relief. So I want to thank you and for your hard work.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So motion to adopt the deputy administrator's report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. So over to Chief Ham for the fire and rescue report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to start by thanking each and every one of you. It's been a pleasure working with you guys. And, I hope we can touch base in the future around town and whatnot. So thank you for your service to the town, and I'm very happy to have worked with you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to really bore you to death with this whole report, but I'll touch on some of the department initiatives. On Tuesday, May 25th, the CVRD presented myself with a second job offer. The first one I wasn't interested in, so but I accepted that one on May 24th, so I am moving forward with the regional district. Now the department has to plan for the vacant positions below. Kevin McGregor, the current deputy chief, has decided that he wants to retire after 26 years of service.
Wow.
So he is stepping down as of the conversion on July 1st. So the department is currently restructuring to occupy that position and move forward. I continue to work with James Bass and our association with our constitution and bylaws and aligning them with the BC Societies Act, and they're in really good shape. Shouldn't be any problem. We're back in the good books. Our dues are paid, and everything should be good there. Continue to meet every week with all the chiefs in the CVRD and James Bass, the fire service manager. Still working on our guidelines to bring them in line with the Comox Valley Regional District, but they're in really good shape too. Our occupational health and safety program, we've done a review against the CVRD's fire services occupational health and safety, and we will be adapting the latter. They're very similar. They're all based on the same thing anyway, but we'll adopt theirs. And we'll have a new fire department website going live on June 28th. It's still under construction, but it's most of it's there. It looks pretty good. We're working with ACS Computer Solutions, of course, still in the move forward. We're going to work on those new computers that are coming from UBID, which would be great for us. And thank you for that. We have changed. The deputy chief has been deleted and the training officer has been deleted. There's a couple of new ones. The training is now training_AC at Union Bay Fire Rescue. And this will be on the website. And the assistant chief of operations will be AC at unionbayfirerescue.ca. But like I said, that'll all be on the website. We're reviewing our accidental death and dismemberment insurance policy. It's all due on July 1st. Under the new agreement, the CVRD pays for the on-duty coverage and UBFR will pay for its off-duty coverage. And that's standard through all the departments in the Comox Valley. I think I'll skip through that part. And the fire bans, I think everybody's pretty familiar with all that. Training, we continue to train, with the COVID protocols. Things are looking better. We're, and most of our training's outside right now, so that's to our advantage. So that's great. We had a couple of tire issues on the vehicles, nothing really serious. The 6 new sets of turnout gear have arrived and are in service with our members. The current membership is, well, as of this report, was 22. We've added 3 more actually, but we're losing 1. So we'll be down to 24, but we just had a couple of returning members that used to serve on fully trained to the 1001 and they're returning. So that's great news for us. We did a little cleanup around the hall and did some mowing around the back where the propane tank was, where the weeds were about 5 feet tall. And now it looks like you can see the tank now, so that's good. As far as public relations go, we had a generous anonymous donation of $200 from somebody in the Bay, which was very nice, and we thank the donor for that. And of course, we're always recruiting. We can take 30 members and we're hovering around 25 now. So anybody knows anybody, come on down. That is my report, respectfully submitted.
Thank you so much. Questions from trustees for Chief Ham? All right, I guess that would also include your specs if there's anything from the select committee component of it. Okay, thank you, Chief Ham. Motion to adopt Chief Ham's report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you so much, Chief Ham, and to your entire team for the great service.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to pause for a sec. There's been 2 things that have come up. One perhaps maybe just attached directly to Chief Ham's report is it's a significant event when somebody retires after 26 years.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering if we want to make a motion to acknowledge Deputy Chief McGregor's retirement and wish him all the best in his the next chapter of his life.
Yes, so moved.
Absolutely. Second.
Yeah,
All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. And the last thing that we've kind of deferred it from Dan's report, and we can just maybe I'm going to recommend we add this to the agenda is just to have some discussions and debate around, is there anything we want to do or can do about the Emerton line and the threat it causes to the highway, given that it has a $100,000 cost to it. It's not an insignificant item, but I'm wondering if we want to add that to the agenda.
Yes, I'm not familiar with this road, Emerton. Where is this located, this area?
Almost down to Buckley Bay. Runs up the hill, almost down to the Buckley Bay frontage road.
It's right after
Oh.
McKay. It's right after My Road McKay.
Okay, all right, thank you. That helps to orient it, yeah.
Okay, so let's add that on. But that'll be under new business, I guess. And first item on new business is trustee Calger was to bring a motion regarding recent findings at Kamloops Residential School.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Rowe. I have been thinking long and hard about what to provide as a motion. I also wanted to wait to see how the federal and provincial governments and the church responded. I've done a lot of research on the matter as well. This has been my processing around the grief of those 215 children. And in that research, I discovered a few things which some of you may not know. St. Anne's of Kamloops also operated schools here on the island, Duncan, and a notoriously brutal place, Cooper Island. And they are refusing to release the documents related to the Indian residential schools. So in terms of what I feel local governments can do is, first, we have to acknowledge the truth of what has taken place and the bodies that are buried all over Canada, in every province, in every location. And this is a huge issue, and we have a duty of care. They were in the care of government when they died. Their bodies are unmarked and unnamed. They must be brought home. Those children must be brought home. And what we can do is put pressure upon both the Catholic and Protestant Church to release those documents, because that is the first step. The first step in truth and reconciliation is truth. Each of them had a name. They have family. They are not an archaeological dig. These are my peers. I was on the docks up and down the coast of Vancouver Island and BC with my father fishing. And I was taught about what the residential schools did to those children as a child myself, because I couldn't understand why they weren't in school. I couldn't understand why they were beaten and punished for speaking their own language. This was incomprehensible to me. So, I'm sorry. I don't want to make an empty gesture. We have to move forward as a community. We're living right now on land owned by Comox First Nation. Every level of government, I believe, needs to work together to bring the children home with dignity and grace. And that's my motion. Thank you.
I appreciate the emotion and the eloquence of your thoughts and your research. And I find it hard to argue with any of it and don't want to. What I want to make sure is I'm uncertain if there is a motion, and if there is, can you express it?
Well, it's simply to not stand in the way that governments have a role here. They were in our care. We have a role here in releasing documentation. That's number one. That's part of transparency and accountability. So as a local politician, I wanted my motion to have some weight to it. Right now in Victoria, in the archives, there is documents related to Kamloops and Cooper Island being held in our provincial archives by St. Anne's, and St. Anne's is refusing to release them. This is wrong, in my opinion. So,
So I'm not trying to be difficult.
yeah,
Is there a motion? Or is it it's
I'm gonna-
sufficient to express to express what you believe?
yeah. I don't know. I really don't know which way to proceed.
You know, perhaps it's as simple as to say, you know, that we acknowledge the discoveries of 215 unmarked graves in Kamloops and encourage all levels of government to seek reconciliation and transparency with respect to this issue.
With respect to bringing the children home. Yes, okay. What Ian said. If that was an acceptable motion, that would work for me.
It's an exceptional motion in that it's outside the purview of our services and what we would normally do, right? I think this is an exceptional circumstance that I would personally be comfortable doing that. Eve, any thoughts?
Oh, I would definitely support that. I mean, even if local governments were getting together and putting out a formal statement in support of this, then I would definitely think UBID should add their voice to that unofficially, if that was happening, or encourage the CVRD to do it.
Would you like to amend the motion to and encourage CVRD to continue that work on our behalf, or to amplify our voice?
Yeah.
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 Yes.
Okay. Shall we leave it there? So the motion, as I said, with the addition of and encourage CVRD to amplify our message as a part of local government.
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
I
Actually, we should officially say who seconds that motion.
so moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I guess the last item then is to discuss this recommendation or question raised by Superintendent McGill regarding the continuous problems we're having with the Emerton line and his concerns that it is approaching the highway and that a significant rupture in that line under the highway could cause structural damage and integrity issues with the highway that would endanger the public if they occurred. So the question would be, and maybe sort of background from our interim administrator as to where we at in terms of making any sort of significant decision like that, or whether that is more of, again, we approve in principle of the use of capital reserve dollars to replace this line, which might be a danger. But I'd love to hear from Gary as to what he thinks our options are.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I can rest assured that, Dan McGill and myself and Janice, we've all brought to the attention of the CVRD. And speaking for myself, I brought to the attention of the CVRD at the highest levels, my concern about the condition of the distribution system. I personally have been, in my experience with working with several municipalities, I can't recall, ever experiencing the nature and the number and the frequency of fairly significant ruptures and leaks in the distribution system. It's one of the things that's really concerned me and really surprised me ever since I came on board. And I've certainly brought that to the attention of CVRD administration and the water folks. They're well aware of it. And now they're probably becoming quite aware of it through the budgetary process, because, these leaks and ruptures do incur costs in terms of overtime and call outs and things like that. So they're now aware of it through all specters of the organization, I think. So that's issue number one. They're very aware of it. But, I think it would be appropriate the washroom issue for the water treatment plant to, bring this to their specific attention as, I won't call it a strategic priority, but a significant issue of concern. And I think it would be appropriate to pass a motion. It can be fairly general in nature, or it can be specific in nature, that, one of the highest priorities moving forward, it's recommended that the board, as one of the highest priorities moving forward, seriously look at the condition of the distribution system. And, clearly this needs to be addressed, and communicate your concerns that, moving forward, the situation is not sustainable. And that, one of your parting recommendations as a board would be to direct priority attention to the Emerton line, but also the overall condition of the distribution system. Now, having said that, as you know, and it's in my report, there's a $50,000 scope of work which is being proposed. We had input into the development of that scope of work, and it's a potential $50,000 water master planning project, which the CVRD is looking for potential sources of funding. They're of the view, as am I, that it's a good potential candidate for grant funding, conversion grant funding. So they're working that avenue. So I would recommend that you consider a motion to, kind of elevate and bring this to their attention at the political level in regards to needing to move forward on the overall distribution system. And you can make specific reference to the Emerton line and potential liabilities and exposures.
So if I was to form a motion, I would probably be very specific. I would direct it at the Emerton line, because we've had a lot of discussions about our 5-year capital plan and about our needs to address the distribution system. And I don't know, maybe Janice can tell us, but my guess is that the 3 or 4 significant leaks that we've had along Emerton have cost us probably close to $10,000 already to repair.
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
So, this is, becoming an issue where you're throwing good money after bad. And I don't think it's appropriate for us to authorize the expenditure of $100,000 right now, but I think it is perhaps appropriate for us to pass a motion, something like, were the UBID board to continue in operation, we would strongly recommend, or we would consider approving, or we would move to approve the replacement of the Emerton line, or solicitation of quotes for the replacement of the Emerton line as soon as practical, in order to preserve public safety and efficiency of costs within UBID. Wasn't very well worded, but something like that.
I understand.
I would be very specific. So I if that motion is good enough for us to put on the table and debate, I would say I've moved it. If somebody second it, and we can then debate it.
Second.
Yeah. Okay, so discussion. Susanna or Eve, thoughts?
I agree. I think, well, I was gonna ask actually about a priorities list. Do we have one that we're going to give them? And this should be, first and foremost on it. And I would assume if Danny has been meeting with them, he's probably already told them this. But yeah, I'm all for making a formal message to them about our priorities, and this sounds like it's very important.
We've always talked about Kilmarnock or Craig Derrick being the leaky sieve.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to have the size of blowouts or grief that's associated with the Emerton line. And you know, I trust Dan's judgment with things like it's getting close to the highway and he knows the size of these blowouts.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And,
I agree.
and the idea of somebody's car driving into a sinkhole that they can't see is scary to me.
Mhm.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah.
I second your motion. Or,
So it is seconded, is it? So Gary, is it clear enough?
Yes, absolutely. It is. I can craft something out for the draft minutes.
Okay. So all in favor of the motion then?
aye.
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 Okay, so unfinished business is again the conversion process and strategic priorities, which I do believe we have discussed. Any further, Gary, or we just move
No.
past that?
Chairman.
Okay, so that's the conclusion of the board portion of the agenda, which moves us to landowner questions, should there be any. Appreciate the support, Mary. Thank you. All right, so no landowner questions. So I guess that brings us to item 10, adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, just a message to Mary. Mary, because I had that 10-minute power failure, I guess it was, I've recorded 2 segments of the meeting. So I'm going to have to rely on you to do the whole recording, hopefully. Okay.
Well, it's
Well,
missing 10 minutes too.
I'm going to be missing a portion, right? Maybe just best to send me the whole recording like you did the last time. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I
All
just
right.
want to say thank you to everyone. It's been a slice.
It's a significant moment in the history of the community, right? And you know, there's 78% of the community that said this is the right way to go, and I'm one of them. I said that. You know, I acknowledge that there's others that disagree, but I'd also like to say that this is a moment or a step on a timeline. And because we're ending the existence of the Union Bay Improvement District and converting the same services to CVRD, that doesn't mean that Union Bay ceases to exist as an amazing place to work and live and walk in the woods and fish out of the harbor and all of those things, right? It's an amazing place, and nothing's changed. Nor has the future changed in that it's always possible for a municipality to arise called Union Bay in the future when conditions support that, which would be population, tax base, all those kinds of things, right? So I just want to acknowledge that this is just a step on the road. It's been a 60-year step. But I'm proud to have been on the board and learned a lot about my community. Anybody else, final remarks? Okay,
No.
motion to adjourn the final regular board meeting of the Union Bay Improvement District.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Take care.
thanks, Ian. Thank you.
Bye-bye.